All right, well, welcome to Avocado's dashboard webinar. Our goal today is to show you an executive dashboard. As an executive assistant, I've seen firsthand how crazy an executive schedule can be. From meetings, managing a team, to always having a full inbox. Thank goodness for dashboards. I've seen how dashboards can bring digestible data to executives, allowing them to see all the program information that they need and making it easier for them to make informed, high-level decisions. Lucky for us today, we have Matt and Luke here as our dashboard experts. And I promise they'll show you a dashboard that is not dash boring. We also have Claire managing the Q&A. So if you have any questions, please feel free to send them over. We'll answer them throughout the presentation, or we'll follow up with you at the very end. So before we get started, Luke is going to tell us a little bit about where dashboards can be built. So we have standard dashboards within eBuilder, as well as advanced reporting and BI, and then Tableau and Power BI, which is done outside of eBuilder. So Luke, do you want to tell us a little bit more about these?
Sure. So the standard dashboards within eBuilder are generally used to create a quick report, something that you want to get some quick analysis from. And the advanced reporting, the key differences there are that they are very interactive. You have a few more options for charts and dashboard, formatting and stuff. And in some ways, it can be more powerful. In contrast, Tableau and Power BI are outside external platforms that can connect to a lot of different data sources. If you want to connect your SAP financials to your eBuilder and compare and contrast those, that could be done within Tableau and blending data. And then lastly, Power BI. It's a very powerful tool that I think a lot of Microsoft Excel users would be attracted to. And in the same way as Tableau, it can connect to a lot of different, a wide array of data sources.
Perfect, thanks Luke. And just for today's dashboard, we'll be seeing that in advanced reporting and BI. And at the very end, Luke will show us a Tableau dashboard as well. So as we go through this, you'll see a few key concepts that we'll cover. This will be how executives can save time with this dashboard, how they can gain accurate insight into what's going on within their program, and how they can plan for future projects. So let's start at the beginning with a dream. This was Matt's dream. He started here on as many great other dashboards were built with a scratch of paper designing this. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to him and he can show us what he's built. And fingers crossed that it lives up to the expectation of that picture there.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. Let me go ahead and share my screen here with you guys. And first of all, yeah, welcome everyone to the webinar. What we're going to show you guys today is a sample dashboard that is primarily focused on cost. The primary target audience for this dashboard would be someone in a decision-making capacity role, someone maybe in leadership role, someone who can, someone who's a director, or even a project manager that is looking to kind of see information across multiple projects. So before we get kind of started here, I do want to point out that this dashboard is available within the dashboards module of eBuilder, so it can be made accessible to your senior leadership without having to kind of go through a list of reports and then kind of remembering which report they have to select. So it's definitely very accessible, and also we can control the permissions as to who can access this information. So let's jump to it. So I want to start with the top of the dashboard, and I'm going to zoom in on it a little bit. And typically, what I like to do is include a list of projects that the data or the visualizations below represent. Now, when you print this dashboard, if you have to print it, you can choose to include it in your overall one-page snapshot, or you can leave it out. But typically, what I would do is I would export this, as I would do with many of these other reports. I would export it to Excel, and then include the detailed data that's within that visual, within that category, as an appendix to your overall deliverable to whoever you're presenting the information to. So this first graphic here, since there are a lot of projects that wouldn't fit within this section, I am grouping these into something that would be, let's say, more meaningful to the user or to the target audience. So in this case, we're grouping it by program. Within each program, you can kind of collapse or expand these little rows and see detailed information. You can see projects. You can see any of your project custom fields. You can load a lot of information here that you think might be helpful to your organization. But within that, you can add hyperlinks to various project screens within eBuilder. So if this is a dashboard, if you're someone that is kind of taking action on this dashboard, whether it's updating some of the data, whether it's kind of drilling into more details, finding the root causes of why things are unusual, then those hyperlinks will be very helpful to you. Next, I want to point out that with any dashboard, we'd like to include a wide range of filters that someone can kind of interact with, and then tailor the data so that it fits or so the information is kind of relevant to the person that this is being presented to. So for instance, if I'm a project manager, I can choose which project I want to kind of focus on and see the details for that project. If I'm someone that is only interested in active projects, you can kind of filter the information by status. And one that is kind of relevant to kind of my personal experience is by building. So I come from an area or from a healthcare sector where buildings were kind of very important. We had a lot of old buildings, but we also had a lot of key buildings, such as hospital building. We had ambulatory, a couple other ones. And everyone was always interested in kind of seeing information just for those buildings. How are we performing? How much money are we spending on, let's say, the hospital building? When is the construction happening for the hospital? All the things that we kind of need to pay attention to, not to impact the patient care. And it's similar to building this program. So if you're presenting this to someone who is an executive of a specific program, that person may just be interested in projects within that program, and you can have that filter for that. On the right, as you can kind of, if you're already looking at some of these visuals, you can see that we chose, for this presentation, we chose to display information from kind of January to December within a single year. But in the organization where your typical project lifecycle is more than a year, you may choose to do, let's say, a timeline that's a little bit bigger than this, maybe the past 3 years or past 5 years, and kind of be able to see how that data is flowing from year to year. And you can use those filters on the right to kind of filter some of that information. And one last thing on filters, just so you know, pretty much any information, any kind of category that you have within your visual, you can add a filter to the dashboard that will let you kind of filter or sort that information in a specific way.
Perfect. So one of the first things I see on the left side is the budget graph. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about what's going on with that one and how it comes into play?
Sure. Yes, of course. So budget is the first one that we kind of want to look at. But before I go there, I do want to point out that the way we kind of design this dashboard is to kind of show potential relationships between the various modules of eBuilder. For instance, the chart on the right or to the right of the budget display kind of information for budget changes, right? So those are feeding into your budget. And then a lot of times, this may be the case for your organization, it may not be, but the change orders oftentimes can result in the budget change as well. And then you can kind of spot certain patterns and when things are happening and how they're affecting one another. But as far as the budget goes, when we design these kind of graphics, we tend to stick to like maybe a gray scale to kind of represent information that is normal. And anything that needs to be addressed or anything that kind of falls outside of your metrics outside of your goals, outside of your targets, is highlighted in a different color. So like for this case, we have orange or yellow. And what that means is that this is how much this program is over budget from what was initially approved. And what was initially approved shows up in gray over here. And here is your overage. Now, all of the organizations typically want to stay as close as possible to that original. So here you can set a target. If let's say this goes over by a certain dollar amount, that's when you can flag it as yellow or orange. But if it's below a certain threshold, it can still remain gray if it's acceptable within your organization. Similarly, if you're let's say if you have negative budget changes, we also want to display it as well, and that would show up on the chart. In this case, it would show up at the bottom. It would show you that you had a negative, and those things could also be kind of red flags in some cases. Let's say if you've over budgeted on a program, and there were probably projects that you could have taken on that same year that could have been revenue generating, and that's how you can also track that from these charts. Now, one thing I want to point out within this chart, and also and that could be the case with all the other ones as well, but you can kind of alter the visual here if you go to the next page. So kind of giving you another sort of layer where you can tailor the dashboard to your specific audience. So like in this case, if you go to the next page, the same budget kind of breaks down into your programs. So various programs, kind of how much you're originally budgeting for them, and kind of also showing the overages for each program. And as you go on, you can also have a visual that shows a trend, let's say year by year, of your current budget, your original, your projected, and then being able to kind of see, how that's changing or how it's maybe staying the same and which direction you're going with your overall budget performance.
And you mentioned there was a relationship between that with the other graphics next to it. Can you explain a little bit how they work together?
Of course. So as I kind of mentioned, or I started mentioning here, once you determine that your current is over your metric, that's when you can kind of use the charts next to it to see what the reasons behind that change or that overage are. So in this case, we have an overage of over $1 million, and we kind of want to see what is the cause of that. And this budget change here will kind of give you an idea of when that overage is happening in your program. And you can also turn this into a much wider time scale, more than a year, and kind of being able to kind of tell those trends, when are those happening, and also use that information in your future project estimating. Let's say if March tends to be a month where you typically have more budget changes, or you need more contingency, then you can kind of factor that in within your cost estimating practices. But like I said, budget changes are feeding into your budget, and then change orders. And this was kind of like the case in my previous company. Like I said, we did have project contingency, we had construction contingency, but sometimes that wasn't enough. And like in this case, you can see that we had a change order for maybe, let's say, a significant amount in February, and then in March you see that you had a budget change. So if you're a decision maker that's kind of looking at this, you can deploy your resources to kind of maybe take a second look at this, have them look at the change orders for February, and have them look at the budget changes and see if there's a connection. And from there, take it to the next level, delegate it to your, let's say, internal process improvement teams, find the root causes, and then work that into your procedures manual, your project manuals, just so that you can kind of lower that bar for the projects to come. Let me kind of show you this breakdown here. So let's say for budget changes, there's a quick way to kind of access the top reason why your budget changes are happening. So in our case, it's design. And I do want to show you this other way of presenting that information here. So for some reason, I like that graphic a lot, and it's just another way to kind of show, like have, allow your user to have a different experience with this dashboard. If maybe use some 3D graphics here. So anyway, so yeah, you have your budget changes. This is your, in our case, this is a top reason for our budget changes. It's our design, and in our case, it also happens to be in this program. So what you would do as a leader in this case, or as a decision maker, that's where you would deploy your resources. You kind of focus them on design, kind of looking at data from March and looking at data within this program and see if there's a connection and see how you can prevent those things in the future.
Yeah, and you can really see just looking at the left side of the dashboard on its own, there's a ton of information there, really saving an executive a lot of time when they're looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have anything on that side that you wanted to finish up with?
Yeah, there's one other thing I want to show everyone here. So as far as change orders go, we have similar thing. We have the top reasons for change orders like we had in the budget changes. But one other thing that we kind of threw in here is change orders by contractor. So, a lot of clients are interested in kind of seeing that metric, and it is important. But I do want to say that this is representing a correlation. So let's say a certain contractor may have more change orders than the other, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's always kind of caused by them. Change orders are caused by many other factors. So I do want to be kind of mindful of that, and I want everyone else to be mindful of it as well. Not to jump to conclusions, but it is an important metric, one that you can also gear your resources toward that direction. Let's look at that contractor and see if we can reduce the number of change orders that we have with them.
Perfect. So next, I think I see a little bit of green on there. And as an Avicado team member, of course, green is my favorite color. So do you want to tell us a little bit what's going on with the actuals paid versus commitments?
Yeah, so that's one thing that clients are always asking for. How are they performing? How are their actuals performing? What months are they spending all of their money or most of the money for the project? And in this chart, you'll see when your commitments are happening throughout the year and how it is comparing to your actuals. So at what point are you actually closing that gap between how much you still have to pay out and how much you've already paid? With this, I do want to point out is that a couple of the things that, let's say, we tracked in my previous company was our performance on how fast we can get our contractors paid, or how many times we go over that the time frame, right? So we always wanted to make sure that we hit the contractual obligations. And so what you can do here is you can show another metric that shows you number of days from invoicing to payment for a contractor, for professional services, and also be able to action those things if needed to be, if that happens to be an important measure for your organization.
Perfect. And Luke, do you want to tell us a little bit about that cash flow diagram that we're seeing next to it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's a very powerful visual, tracking the amount of cash that is, generated or consumed in a given time period. In this case, it would be the next fiscal year. And it can be used in conjunction with the planning module or cost inside of eBuilder to determine the shape of distributions of funds and curve that you want to see, and identifying potential problems throughout the year. And there's a lot of things that you can configure within this, BI visual, such as, setting a limit for, whenever a month crosses a certain threshold, it'll conditionally format it, or on the other side of this view, there is a breakdown that you could export if you'd like. So if you go to that next page, you'll see the monthly, the numbers behind the scenes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Matt.
Oh yeah, no, I was just going to kind of pick it up from there. So yeah, that just like with some of these other visuals, that detail would be something that would follow the paper trail here. So if you are kind of printing this out, print out the snapshot of the visuals and then kind of print out the detail that goes behind it so that in case someone is looking for that detail, they can easily access it.
Perfect. So with those, you can see how that really gives good insight to what's going on within the organization. So, what happens when amounts are over estimates and how does that affect planning and schedule?
Yeah, so in this case, we do have a few that are kind of over our estimates or over, so cash flow for months that, in this case, let's say an organization decided that they're not going to have enough funds to kind of funnel that cash flow that they need to kind of have in place to cover it. So one thing, so you can kind of take two paths here to kind of resolve it, right? One, you can shift your schedules, your project schedules, so that curve is gets kind of flattened out a little bit more. Or two is you can kind of affect your budget and funnel more money overall to the program, and then kind of increasing that curve. And at the same time, you can make that decision here by looking at how much overage you currently have and whether you can take on more overage to kind of cover that cash flow, or you can take the second path, which is essentially looking at your schedule. And that is this visual here. So for this visual, what we decided to do is kind of list all of the projects and only show their construction tasks. So when is construction happening for each month? Construction tends to be the biggest task, and one potentially where if you affect it or if you impact it, it might be the one that is going to cost the most money. So if I am looking at cash flows and I know for next year I need to flatten my curve for February, March, April, and May, looking at the schedule, I can kind of at a glance see which projects or which construction or where construction hasn't started for projects. And I can, let's say, select the top 5 that I want to focus on and then action that to someone that can actually do some of the investigative work, having those discussions with project managers, coming up with the pros and cons list, and determining what the impact is going to be if you decide to shift those schedules, update those cash flows, and then eventually flatten out that curve to fit your organization's needs. The other kind of use case for the schedule visual is, and this was the case in my previous experience. So our department had, or our organization had an internal team that was responsible for activating spaces. This was our IT team. And oftentimes we ran into situations where, let's say we didn't have enough resources, we had too many activations at the same time, and teams would realize that, hey, we need more people. Sometimes, quick decisions had to be made to shift the schedules or to add more resources. But in this case, you can include this visual with in your planning meetings with those teams, if you have those internal teams, and kind of being able to show them, hey, all the schedules are loaded. This is what we're looking at. This is how many activations we're going to have in this month. Can you guys handle it? Do you need to procure additional consultants today that you'll be able to handle this workload, or do we need to shift our schedules so that we can still make sure that this happens as planned?
Yeah, you could really see how that would help with planning projects a lot, just giving that visual representation of it. But lastly, it looks like we have just a few images left. So on the bottom right, do you want to talk about how those affect cost estimating?
Yes, of course. So throughout this dashboard, we were focusing on cost. And I do want to point out that a lot of these cost measures, things are being tracked over time. A lot of these can be used for your cost estimating practices for the next set of projects. But then you can add additional metrics like we did over here. So for instance, kind of seeing what the cost per square foot is by building, depending on the age of the building, it might be more expensive to do projects in one or the other, how your cost per square foot compares by program. And then you could add various other metrics here that you may be able to track within eBuilder that kind of are important for when you do actually come up with your cost estimate. Now, I do want to point out that these could also be put on a timeline, so you can kind of see how the cost per square foot is performing over time within your organization. You can set upper limits and again, highlight things in red that go over your target metrics. So for instance, you can import industry benchmarks and then see how you're performing against those benchmarks. And again, there's a whole wide variety of metrics that you can add to this that can really help you with your cost estimating practices. What you can also do is validate. So let's say if you're an organization that typically goes out to a consultant to do the cost estimating for your company, for your projects, let's say they can do their independent cost estimate per square foot, but then you can come back to eBuilder and actually see what you've spent on projects to date and see if there's a big variance. And if there is, point them to this direction, have them uncover the reasons why there's a variance, and really validate your data so that next time around for the next cycle, that hopefully that current or the projected changes for the budget are to stay to a minimum.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Matt, for showing us this dashboard and all the ins and outs of it and how it works. You can see that there's immense value in it, and it can really provide an executive accurate information on what's going on in their program, helping them plan for future projects and saving a lot of time. But we do have one more thing. So we will bounce it over to Luke to share a Tableau dashboard with us. And I encourage anybody with any questions to please send them over. We'll be around for a little bit after we can help answer them.
Yeah, so hey everybody. This is a Tableau dashboard published on their online instance called Tableau Server. One of the benefits of this website is being able to either use a static data source like this one that was refreshed 2 months ago. This is actually eBuilder data, sample eBuilder data. And alternatively, using live or extracted data to refresh it on a daily or twice daily sort of schedule. So as you can see, this is an executive cost summary similar to the one we viewed that Matt had demoed. I think it's great for viewing a quick update at a glance, or alternatively taking a snapshot. Let's say you could add a filter for a project and take pictures to put in your PowerPoint for next week's meeting. Seeing at a glance the breakdown of the actuals that have been spent to date or to month, and then also tracking your progress against the forecasted or the forecast or the cash flow, and seeing where your actuals land. I think that's a powerful visual. And then at the bottom here, you have benchmarking against the estimated completion, seeing where you're at different points of the year. I think that's powerful to use. Split up by cost category, and that could be configurable as well. And then on the right here, I think the colors over here are worth quite a bit, pointing out the biggest changes from different companies or contractors on their POs, and then also tracking where you're at that point of the year against your current budget with your actuals. And this Tableau, one of the benefits of it is using the eBuilder API or the data warehouse to get this information from. And one of the plus sides of doing BI inside of eBuilder is that the data you're using is 100% accurate and up to date. And on Tableau, you do have to set it to a refresh, but it will be accurate as well.